Hello and welcome to Procrastination Station. Procrastination as in procrastinating and that other thing that we all do. If you can put it together, then you're my people, and if you can't, perhaps click that next button. No shade. I'm your host Hannah, and I'm here to talk about self-sabotage in a way that invites all parts of us to come along for the journey. I'm here to lay out the setbacks and superpowers of self-sabotage in order to manage our limitations. Throughout the show, we'll discuss designing a life that works in your favor through sustainable creative practices. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you enjoyed today's topic. Hello and welcome to Procrastination Station. I have something so special for you today. I have my friend here, Lorenzo. We met at a launch party of a mutual friend of ours, and it was a super duper blast. We were both on a speakers panel, and Lorenzo shared some amazing things about mindset and self-development and lots of things that I'm just personally interested in, which is why I wanted him to join me on the show. So I would love to give Lorenzo a moment to introduce himself, introduce his business, and then we can move into an introduction of this topic. And then there we go. Take it away, Lorenzo.
Great. Well, thank you so much first and foremost for having me on the show. And just to get back to what you had said there, yeah, we met at Rachel's launch party. It was awesome. And what a great panel we had. And you were such an awesome panelist also. And I'm glad that we just hit it off when we met. And to be on the show, I'm honored, honestly. I'm happy to be here. Just a little bit about myself. My name is Lorenzo. Everyone knows that now. Hi. You know what? Matt and I, my business partner, we formed the Professional Risk Takers, a business that we have here with a purpose in mind. I can think back to the 20 plus years that I started back when I was in business. And, just always had questions and not knowing how to navigate or where to go to and where to turn to. And Matt has had similar experiences too. He grew up in an entrepreneurial household and he's had his own business for years too. And it just clicked. I've known Matt for years. We get along super, super well. We're really great friends. But it really clicked in a conversation we had one day about, people starting out in a business. And wouldn't it be great to have a platform or a space where people could either reach out, where we could share our experiences, our knowledge, and then the idea formed to have a podcast to really establish a platform where people could come on the show for free. If an entrepreneur, a business professional, where we could showcase them, their business, and they would have a platform where they could actually speak about what they do, but also beyond just what they do, we could talk to them about real life experiences. And so whatever they share, the intent was so that the audience could benefit from it. Even if they helped one person that would listen that day, 1 point, to me, like I've said up before on the show, it's mission accomplished. That's the whole key to what we're doing. And then things have evolved too, into where we do have, it's not a program, but we do offer mentoring. If somebody's looking to start out their business, we can definitely help them get their business from conception to realization. If somebody already has a business, again, Matt and I we have the opportunity here to be able to help people to, give us another set of eyes and ears and see where the business is at, where they can make improvements, where they can scale. And then too, Matt and I have quickly realized too, over the years, we're really a conduit to being able to connect people, with the vast network that both Matt and I have. And so that's kind of what we formed together here. And that's what we put the business together, the Professional Risk Takers. So that's that.
That's amazing. I really love that. And I respect that too. I think it's it's so special to have somebody that you can work with in business. Me and Rachel, we've been working very closely for I want to say since April or so. It hasn't been very long, but when we met, it was one of those things where it was instant best friends. We just had so much in common where it was we're meant to know each other and let's just take it from there. And have, even in business, having somebody who can stay up late with you to work on a problem that you're putting together or sell on your behalf. And that if you're striving for this really big dream and it's not just you as a solopreneur going after this big dream, it's just it is so friggin' special because before this,
you have someone that got your back.
Exactly. And before this, I was a solopreneur and it was everything was on my shoulders. I was the only one doing work towards my big dreams. And You know, it's very it's very lonely. It's very isolating,
It
and
totally can be.
it's
Totally.
absolutely. And like, you know, that's part of this journey of being an entrepreneur. And you know, it's good to be it's good to learn how to be alone with yourself and how to rely on yourself. But it's also really good to have community.
Oh, big time. Big time. Community is such a big help. You know, just knowing that someone's in your corner or that someone's like a phone call or a text away, that makes a huge impact.
Absolutely. I would really love to know, with professional risk takers, I understand that you're giving people spaces to highlight what they do, but even beyond that, who they are as an entrepreneur and maybe some of the lessons that they had to learn along the way so that people listening can also learn quicker from those lessons that someone's sharing from their experience. I would really love to know how mindset plays a role in your show.
It's you know, that's a great question. Matt and I, you know, I feel like mindset has always been around, but I think like via social media, it's become like a very, very trending topic. And I see both sides of this coin. I think it's important that people become in tune with mindset and what mindset really means. But Matt and I didn't we didn't start the show, or we don't do any of the things that we do as because it's like a trending thing. Like the mindset aspect, that's something that Matt and I have individually worked on for our own personal goals, for whatever personal needs we've had. And and we really align in terms of thought, goals, but that's because we've done the work too. So mindset on this show and mindset with any client that we have is probably, I see, the foundation of everything, because you have to have a good mindset when it comes to, listen, if you're going to start a business, it's not an easy road. And not that that should discourage anybody, but it's something that you really be mentally prepared for. And mindset plays a huge role and impact in your way of life. And because you're going to hit the speed bumps, you're going to have to overcome hurdles, and you're going to have to really be okay with when things aren't okay, because that's going to happen. And so mindset plays a critical role in all of it. And it's not just about being, you know, super positive, because I think positivity has to be there, because I know a pessimistic attitude also is very, very catastrophic. But you have to also be a realist. I've always positioned myself as being a realist with positivity attached to that as well, right? You need to be positive, and you have, you know, that ambition and positive goals, but you can't. It's not just you're not going to wake up smiling every day. That's the reality, and you have to have the mindset to be like, when the days aren't so sunshine, when the days are where I'm frowning a bit more, where I'm in my own head, that's where mindset kicks in to be like, okay, I'm not feeling the greatest, but here's where the discipline takes over now. And I'm going to continue plugging away at what I need to be doing. And maybe we don't do it 100% that day, and that's fine, but that's 100% of what we could do. So if that makes sense. And so that's why, without being overly, you know, too long-winded here, mindset is a critical foundation to everything that we do, everything that someone does in business.
You touched on so many fantastic points. That this is why we're here today, talking about the trendiness of mindset, while
Mhm.
also conveying how important and integral mindset is to entrepreneurship. When I started my business, I was really faced with myself, with my work ethic, with my mindset, the way that I navigate my life and my problems. And I feel so grateful and so blessed that I have come to a lot of realizations about myself within my 20s, when a lot of people take till they're in their 50s, 60s, even never,
Yeah.
to come to realizations about just their mindset and the way that they see the world and perspective. And so I think that that is, you just honestly, you summed up the introduction of this episode so perfectly. I don't even think there's anything I can add. Today I want to talk about mindset culture, and you know how there is truly some very dangerous people out there who are saying, think like me, think like me.
Right.
My goal with this episode is to talk about discernment on how we can actually engage in this mindset culture to better ourselves. And it's never a bad thing to improve your mindset, but
Right.
how do you also discern how to, like, who to listen to?
Hmm.
And something else that you said that I really resonate with is being an optimistic realist. I'm the same way. I find that sometimes I can almost detach myself too much from the magical side of life. And I don't want that. So that's part of my mindset practice, is to introduce more of that magical side of life and to really allow myself to dream big and all of these things, but keeping myself grounded at the same time and not getting caught up in magical thinking
Hmm.
where my world is all sunshines and rainbows and everyone else's is crumbling. I think that it is important to be realistic of just all of the things. So
Right.
that being said, I would really love to get into this topic. And yeah, I'm so excited to have you here to talk about it, because I think that we do have a lot of alignment
We
around
do, definitely.
the way that we see it. So that's really fantastic. I love when that happens. So I would love to know, to start us off, like, what has mindset looked like for you throughout your life personally? Like,
Mm.
have you gone through a mindset evolution? Has this been something you've been interested in since day one? What's that looking like?
Um, you know what? I think it's been an evolution for sure. As we mature and as lives, we encounter different experiences. Um, and I think both experiences, not to label them, but positive and negative, just for sake of terms, we're gonna experience both. And I think as you go through the tough ones, I think it shapes your character, and I think your mindset also grows through that. The one thing I do say is that, like, every hardship that we face, okay, will always leave a lesson. But if we don't get the lesson, the hardship served no purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a shame, because, like, if you're really, when you put metal, when you forge something in the fire, it has to go through the fire at that point to be refined. And if you're going through something that feels like that and you don't get the lesson, I think it's a shame. It's a waste.
Yeah.
And I can remember, and I think we can all relate. I think anyone that's going to be listening to this can relate to, like, being in a storm and not seeing the way out. I can remember
Mm-hmm.
days where I'm like, how am I going to get through this? Right. But you do. And it's going through that you really start to, one, you learn who you are. I think a different part of you, I think a different version of you develops, and I think it's for the best. I think it's for really good things, because you become stronger. So yeah, I've had to face, both the good and not so good times, and I think my mindset has evolved through each of those episodes, even through the good stuff. Like, I mean, when things are going great, and I think they should, I think we should not hide the fact that we should expect things to go well. You know, it may not go well every day, but overall, we should not hold back from wanting to see good. And when you do go through good times, and I think it's something that should be celebrated. I can remember a time, here's a mindset evolution. I'll give you a brief experience. I can remember a time where I used to think that I have to get to this point where I can really have like a celebration, where I can say, like, hey, I kind of made it. And what I failed to realize was that all the small wins, and this is not to sound cliche, but it's the truth. Like, all the small wins that I should have celebrated, I think would have made the whole path more enjoyable, more fun. And I missed out on that. And so now I feel like when there's something that should be celebrated, what does celebration look like? It could be like, like taking a minute to yourself, or sharing with someone that you really love, trust, whatever, and just say, hey, this has happened, and have that moment of celebration. And then it could be like bigger also. But I mean, I think it needs to be acknowledged. And I think that's, for me, that's one thing that I had to learn and come to appreciate with time.
I love that. And I'm totally with you with, like, if you've been putting off doing your taxes and then you do your taxes, you deserve to buy cake. You also deserve
Yeah.
to buy cake if you just, like, I don't know, executed your routine flawlessly today. Like, you don't need to have a huge big reason as to
Yep.
why you should celebrate. And, like, this is why we're here, is to celebrate life, to connect with people around a table of food. And I think you touched on so many magical things. In terms of myself or mindset, I can really relate to the idea of like going through a big fire and then that refines you as you get older. However, I have also sort of undergone this. I don't know if I want to say if I kind of got caught up in the trendiness of mindset a little bit, where I was very actively going out there to be like, I am working on mindset today. And it wasn't always necessarily the life things that would teach me these lessons. However, true maturity comes from life things teaching you these lessons, because you can understand all of these things in theory, but until you know how to put them into practice, and the only way to put your mindset into practice is to be faced with the challenge, then you haven't actually done that work to like really solidify that mindset. And that was something that when I first started out, that was something I was missing. Where it's like, oh, but I know how to be positive. I know about toxic positivity, and I know about manifestation and blah 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 blah. And I was like, I knew all of these things in my head, but I hadn't integrated them into my whole being.
Right.
And so, like I like to think of the term healing and mindset work to be like a forever game. It's something that you have to tune and just keep up with the times and check in. And I think that even just reflecting on the last 5 or 6 years, that I am not the same person that I was. However, the biggest thing with mindset for myself has been not necessarily trying to change myself beyond who I am, not trying to heal to be a different version of myself. And that was a goal of mine at one point, where it's like I was dealing with some negativity and some self-hatred and stuff like that. And then I found mindset work and healing and stuff like that. And then I was like, okay, cool. This is like a perfect outlet for me to completely reinvent myself and just be someone different, until I realized the truth that instead you're more like becoming more of who you are
Yes.
and refining who you are at your core.
In I had the privilege to speak at an event, and the topic I spoke on was about authenticity. And one little thing that has always stuck to me about being authentic is that we're always told to become the best version of yourself. But I really like what you just said there, because we don't want to lose who we are either. So what I say to that is like, yes, become the best version of yourself, because there's, from a pragmatic standpoint, like there's things that we want to improve on to become the best, for ourselves. But I also add this depth to that saying, is that become the favorite version of yourself. And what does your favorite version look like? How does that person talk? How do they move? How do they think? How do they live their life? Because when we think about a favorite moment we've had in life, I could tell you that it was filled with joy and happiness and like something that really etched our memory. And that's where I bring that depth to that. And for myself, it's like, what does a favorite version of myself look like? What am I going to be doing that's my favorite? Like that brings out the best in me. And so I think that's a critical point to keep in mind. And just to go, not to take our conversation too far sideways, but I love what you said there about, there's so many people that out there that, they do the work, but they haven't lived it, haven't experienced it. And I think that's where the caution, you had said, like, how do we be cautious with who we see and who we follow? I think that's a huge, huge point right there. We have to be discerning to ensure that whoever it is that we do listen to or follow or take advice from, for example, being book smart is good. I think we need to educate ourselves, our mind, but we also have to be careful that like someone who's actually been through it, they don't need to sell you anything. They don't need to try. And we can discern that. We should be able to see that clearly in the way that they, not only the way they speak, but also the way they live their life. That's congruent. Everything lines up.
Absolutely. You make so many great points. I really love this. I could talk endlessly on the idea of authenticity just as a concept. I think that is another full culture that's almost become trendy in a way that does sort of ignore the reality of it, where I can be equally authentic putting on a professional face and going to work as I am chilling out with my friends and letting my freak flag fly.
Yep.
Like both of those versions of me are me. And
Mhm.
I find that authenticity culture tends to be like almost just saying you should be all of you all of the time. And I think that can be very like not great.
It's not realistic.
It's not realistic. And if you do try to have that expectation of yourself, you're going to be met with hate
Mhm.
and with people who don't like you. And I like being liked. And that sometimes means putting my weirdness in my pocket for a minute and, just like not feeling like I have to even show that in order for it to get rejected. However, that being said, moving on to my next question here. So you have been talking about like being a realistic optimist and being more of a pragmatic person. I really truly see myself in very similar ways. And I'm curious if we have words that we can share around on how we can remain pragmatic and realistic without creating limitation around achieving big dreams. I'm really interested in manifestation and how our internal world can be reflected into our external world. However, just to give a bit of an example, there's been times where, like, I will be thinking about something that actually happened, that was real, that was negative, and then I'll catch myself and be like, "No, no, no, if you want this big dream, you can't be thinking that limitation bull crap," and almost, like, gaslighting myself to not feel how I feel in the name of, like, creating a better life for myself. I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
So, um, I think being pragmatic is a place, obviously. Being dream great big has its place. I think it's a balance. I mean, here's something I saw. Actually, literally saw this morning. I was driving my daughter to daycare this morning. Someone literally had this draped over their garage. This huge sign. Can't even make this up. It said "Dream big because you're worth it." Why they had it draped on their garage, I don't know, but that was the banner that they had, and good for them. I think we should dream big because sometimes we also have you know certain ceilings that have been imposed on us from childhood or an experience or an event, and I think we should be able to dream big and think outside the box and enjoy that, expand the world of possibility. I believe in all of those things, but it's also, you got to have like achievable goals that you have to be able to systematically get to. I always liken it to this. Like, I always say, look at the big picture. Like when we have a lens, like a camera lens, we can zoom in and zoom out, and I think that's what this calls for, like zooming in and zooming out. There's times where we really got to zoom in and on a specific task or a specific area of life, but we also have to like zoom out with the lens too, and take a look at the bigger picture and see where we're going. Because like if we have a goal, we could get stuck somewhere and start looping and not moving forward and not realize it, because we think like, no, I got to get this done. But the thing is, like, you can't give up on your dream. You have to keep working at it, but you have to be able to zoom in and out and see where you are in that timeline, and are you actually making the progress forward. Here's a thought too. Being realistic, uh differentiate that between limitation. We all have limitations, but don't impose other limitations on yourself. If you haven't ever experienced or done something before, it doesn't mean you can't do it. And it's not having reasonable, or like having the thought of like delusion. You have to have a little bit of a dream aspect, way of thought, to make things, and challenge yourself to do bigger than you've done before. If that's what you want to do. Some people don't want to do that, and that's okay too. But I feel like that many that are on this, especially an entrepreneurial journey, they're trying to achieve something that's bigger than them sometimes, and they have their reasons for that. They have their why for that, and that's a personal thing for them to achieve that. Hope that answers your question a little bit.
It truly, truly does. No, that was amazing. I'm a very visual person, and you were talking about like zooming in and zooming out, and I really just love that you highlighted that. That's something that I often practice in my own meditations, where I imagine myself like a hawk, because hawks can fly so, so high. And they can also be grounded. They can be pretty close to the problem too. And I like to see it as, when I am high up in the sky, then I'm practicing more of like a visionary type of life, where I have to see 5 years ahead of the problem, if not 25 years ahead of the problem, and just see like, why am I doing this? Why am I here? What do all the pieces of this puzzle mean? And then there's the grounded side of things, where you are actually engineering rather than envisioning. You're engineering, where you're like, you're in the problem, you're tinkering, you're building, sometimes you're even destroying. And it's something that has been a lifelong practice for me, is not getting caught in the little details and knowing when to tell myself, what's your bigger picture? What's the bird's eye view here? And also allowing myself to zoom in a little bit when I'm feeling like I might be missing some of the tangible work with this problem. Sometimes I like to think too far ahead, and I'm like, okay, like, super great that you have a brain that can do that, but if you don't have the lived experiences to back that up, then you don't know actually what it feels like to be that person yet.
Right.
And that doesn't mean you will never know what it feels like to be that person yet, but when it comes to manifesting and like bringing these big dreams into fruition, then like something that's talked about a lot is like embodying the person who has that goal. And even if you're like so far away from that goal, like, what's one thing that you can do to make yourself feel the way that it would feel? And as you feel the way that it would feel, you're telling the universe, like, I'm ready to feel this life. Um, and I just kind of think that like there is a balance to it, where we can be realistic of like, okay, there are steps in order to get to this final goal. It's very rare and very challenging to go from like startup entrepreneur, you have this big dream, but you're still building your foundations, to next month expecting yourself to be like selling out stages and Miss Taylor Swift Jr. or something like that. And like I do think that you need those steps in between in order to prepare you and develop you to a point where you can very, very pragmatically, I like that word, just embody that person in a way that's humble, in a way that's actually done the work. I think that's a really huge thing in mindset culture, is like, it's almost like wishing your negative life away instead of doing the work. And doing the work is just so important.
I couldn't agree more. One thing in other businesses I've had, like where we like service-oriented businesses, I've always told my staff this: I'll never ask you to do something that I've never done. And that's the truth, because any business that I've started in the service industry, specific, I've done the work, and I do the work for two reasons. One, so that I understand it thoroughly, so that I know how it's done properly, how be efficient, all those things. Okay. But also when it's time to expand and grow, how am I going to have someone else replace me if I haven't done it and I can't explain it to them? And I'll only be able to explain to them through experience, having done it, having gone through the motion, having lived through it, and having made the mistakes. How many people don't want to make a mistake? I can remember, actually, the evolution of mind, we touched on that before. That was one thing for me I really, really had to overcome. I was always put a lot of pressure on myself to not make mistakes. But I've learned in life that like the mistakes that you make, you have to get through that, because that's what will teach. It's a lesson that you're going to learn from that, right? And it's not to sound cliche, but it's the truth. And so you have to go through, you have to roll up your sleeves and do the work. Because imagine, let's say you start, like, to your point, let's say you start day one, you open up your business. In week two, you're on social media, you got your website and everything. And then by week three, you want to be at the top of your game. Let's say that happened. Theoretically, that happened. You wouldn't be ready for it. You wouldn't be able to handle it. And as fast as you got it, you'd lose it. And that's why, a lot of people don't want to do the work in between. But that's where you develop, that's where you grow, that's who you become, what you need to become. Everyone wants a shortcut. There's no shortcut way in this world, especially on this journey that, being an entrepreneur. There's no shortcut.
I think that is such a powerful point about like as quick as you get it, you'll lose it just as quickly. Like, yeah, as I know for myself, my goal since day one has been to build a sustainable long-term career.
Right.
Not just some get rich quick overnight thing. It's something that I've built for myself that supports me in all of my ways and that I enjoy doing. And that's it. And then like to consider how, especially in the social media space as I am, like meeting people where like they really don't give a shit and you can just tell, and there it's like this very manicured, just I don't like talking
I,
ill of people, but it's a fakeness, and I truly hate that. The reason I have a social media business is because I personally hate doing social media, so I can imagine there's like a million bajillion business owners who also hate doing their social media. And
totally.
I would love to build something where I can have a staff and have people and train people and similar as you do the work myself first so that I know how to hire and who to hire. And yeah, and just like take social media off of people's plates because it's a terrible place to be. It honestly kind of sucks.
I
Um,
don't know how to navigate through. It's like anything else. You
exactly.
get on weeds real quick.
Absolutely, absolutely. I just think you touched on so many great points just about like doing the work and um being ready for things. I really appreciate what
Hmm.
you added there. The reason I have you on here today, the thing that drew me to say I need Lorenzo on my show was during Rachel's launch party event. You had mentioned that you're going through an experience within your business. I won't go into it. And this was we'll call it what it is, a more negative experience. You were rushed with a bunch of feelings, as one would be. And then you mentioned that you allowed these feelings to come in and
Hmm.
then you put them aside and got to work
Hmm.
because that's what the situation called for. And I find within mindset culture and within business in general, a lot of the time we can almost have this expectation of getting straight to that point of action. Or if you are somebody who deals with a lot of feelings, to have those feelings come in and then be like, okay, well, I can't come back from this. This is over. And then you just resign to those feelings. I would love to know your take on how you were able to achieve this balance and how we can actually honor our feelings without resigning to them and also without suppressing them at the same time.
Yeah, that's. I think a lot of times what happens when we're faced with a situation that is it could be traumatic. It could be a very high stress. And we're talking like these are like mega pressure situations. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, we have to be careful to not want to neglect what feeling is coming up, and because if we don't let that come up, if we don't feel it, it's gonna hurt us. It'll hurt us later on because it won't go away. And something that I've learned personally is that in traumatic experiences, the body will remember pain and it will surface in another way if we don't deal with it. And that's something that I had to deal with. I could tell you experience, when I was in my younger years, I'm not going to cry. My grandparents passed away. I cried, suppress, and like bold face. I think there's times where we need to be stoic. I think there's times where we need to be the strong person for somebody else, and I think we also need to be strong for ourselves. But in my personal experience, and like when what you're touching on is that I had feelings come up, feelings of like I felt like I was losing. I felt like I had failed in many areas. I couldn't cope with the fact for a while. Like I've had so much upswing in terms of business success and and so many positive things happening and growth. And I hit this like I felt what I felt like was a roadblock and something that had really come out of left field. And there's multiple things that had happened all at once. So it wasn't just one thing; it was multiple things happening all at once. But had I ignored that, I think it would have been worse for me. And some things take time. The more serious the situation, the longer it's going to take to heal, the longer it's going to take to get through it. But we can't ignore it. If we're feeling a certain way, we do need to kind of take a step back and let that feeling and recognize what it is and why we're feeling that. Because there's a root issue, there's a root cause to why that feeling is coming. And so, what's the root issue? What's the cause? Because if we don't get to the root of the problem, it's never going to really go away. We can ignore it, we can pretend it's not there, but it's still there. And when we do ignore it, it actually affects us, affects the way we think, the way we act, big time. Even from a physical standpoint, it'll affect us in the way that we sleep. It'll affect the way even the simple way that we digest our food. It'll be affected, and so we have to be able to sit in the feels and let it and figure out what's going on. And then there was a time where you have to, as you get through, you're figuring yourself what's going on, but you have to kind of get back to work. But there's a time where, to your point, you don't want to just fast forward and jump straight to it. If you do that, you're going to miss out on a lot of things and things that will come back later on in life. So I think there's a point that we have to, ignore the noise from social media or the outside world that says be strong 24/7 and bolster on. There's time and a place for that. But when we're going through something serious, we need to recognize what's going on.
Beautiful. If you don't address things head on, then they can come up in different ways, and they can even come up in your health. That was something that I realized at one point in my life where I did completely suppress and avoid and ignore things that had happened to me, and I won't go into details, but I ignored them to the point where I actually forgot. I just had completely forgotten that these negative things had happened to me, and then I get to a point of being around 22, and I was faced with all of these memories. They actually rushed in a movie-style moment where you get these flashes of your entire life in front of you, and I
Right.
was like, "Oh, shit. This is why I've made the decisions that I have. This is why I've been the way that I am," and it was just such a wake-up call moment where I was also understanding that, when I would get chronic pain, a lot of the time that was because I was not addressing what I had experienced, and, believe
Yep.
me when I say I had forgotten. There was no replay in my mind, even in the back of my mind, saying anything that had happened, but I was
Mhm.
still experiencing the physical feelings of the stress, and it's just something that's so honestly, in a way, incredible to me that our brains are capable of doing these things, and that your body will make you deal with your stress and deal with your feelings whether or not you're willing to acknowledge them. However, something that I've experienced and that I almost, to a degree, continue to experience is almost this fear of what if I'm suppressing something and I'm just really, really good at lying to myself and I just don't know it's there? And what if I turn 50 and I'm like, well, damn, I have this other movie life moment, and I'm curious, this wasn't in our plan discussion, but I'm curious if you have any ideas on, how do you know if you have addressed everything? Is that even a realistic question to ask?
I mean, let's see what we can do with it. I mean, I think all of us can be honest with ourselves. If we really sit, no distraction, and be honest with ourselves, we know the truth. We know the truth if we've been honest with ourselves or not. And I think we live in such of a fast pace. Okay, the days just clip by, where it's so easy to quote unquote forget or suppress. And but if we really want to deal with something, we need to just slow down and maybe even come to a stop and just be honest with ourselves. Be honest with the person that we are and just be like, have I dealt with this? I know for sure for myself, there's things that I haven't fully dealt with. I will, whether I want to or not, I will. Um, but I think it boils down to this point, being honest with ourselves. And we can lie to ourselves. When here's a funny thing. When you tell a lie, whether it's to someone else or to yourself,
Yeah.
you know, and it's up to you at that point how you're going to act. And so if we've been lying to ourselves, saying that we're okay when we're not, we know. and it's up to us to take a step in the direction to resolve that, whatever is lingering.
Yeah.
That's my take on that.
It's a wonderful take, and like I'm receiving it. I don't have ideas and thoughts to share because this is like literally probably my lifelong question, and I think that's okay. I think it's okay to take on a lifelong journey of
It is.
addressing your past and just ensuring that your ducks stay in a row.
Yeah. And I think too, sometimes we feel like everything has to be resolved or solved. Some things, unfortunately, some things take longer, and some things maybe they're going to stay with us, and we just have to be able to cope the best we can with it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm taking this conversation in. This has been really wonderful. I'm gonna have so many insights even like later tonight when I'm trying to fall asleep of like, did you hear that? And that's perfect. That's exactly what I want the show to be. So I really appreciate just all of your insights, and thank you so much for being here. We do have a few questions left, but
Sure.
I just wanted to take a quick moment and just say this has been really fantastic. Thank you so much.
Good. Same with me.
I'm really glad to hear that. So I gather from just everything that you shared that you know so much about mindset culture and about yourself, and that you do and I could be wrong, but you pick me as the type of person who people go to for advice. Would you agree with that? Do people ask you for advice?
You know what? Not to sound egotistical or vain, yes.
And I don't think that's vain at all. I
Um,
do also tend to be the person people go to for advice, at least in my circle.
right, right. And I think it's also like part of who we are like, as a physiological makeup. People can sense if you're they can be attracted to you, to want to share. It's just maybe the way we're made up, and then also life experience. People can tell if someone has life experience, and they may want to tap into that or ask a question. So yeah, I've had many people approach me for different things. Yeah.
Yeah. So with these next couple questions, I would really love to address specifically other people who might be like us, where they
Mhm.
like to give advice. They might resonate with labels such as teacher or healer or mentor, and they want to be able to give advice in a way that really actually truly helps people. Because that's where it comes from for me is I've
Gladly.
always been the type of person, regardless of how much life experience I have, I've always wanted to help, which
Yes.
I will also admit there has been times in my life where I came off as a bit of an ass, where I'm giving advice on something that I haven't actually lived myself yet. And that's obviously that's not the great thing to do. You should also be giving advice from a place of your lived experience of things, but as you mentioned before, not telling somebody to do something that you haven't done yourself. And I would really love to know if you did have any advice specifically to the advice givers.
Sure. Yeah. Um, One thing that always comes to mind is that it's a weighty responsibility, and it's also a privilege. So weighty responsibility in that if someone has come to you and asks you for something, not for something, but that asks you, um, they obviously have an element of trust in you, and there's also an element of vulnerability too on their part. And so if someone approaches you for advice, I think it's a weighty responsibility in how we handle that. To your point, if we don't have the experience in something, maybe someone has asked us, we can just openly say, like, I personally don't have the experience in this. Let them know. You might have a perspective. You can share. I could share a perspective, but I don't personally have the experience. But if we do have the personal experience, we have to be able to share in a way that they can one receive and understand it. And we have to also be careful, like that, what we're sharing with someone, one, that they are ready to handle it, and they can actually run with it, because sometimes people want advice on something that maybe they're not ready with or ready for. Are we in a position to be able to let them know, like, to even be cautious with what you're endeavoring, because we have the experience and maybe they don't. But my take is always this: if you're going to give advice to someone, be sure you know beyond like a textbook, beyond, be sure that you know what you're sharing. And
Yeah.
it goes way well beyond, something that we may read or have listened to. It's something that we have had to have some sort of life experience, and I believe anyways that before you share something with someone, that it's really authentic, it's truly coming from you, and that have something of value to share with them. And it's a privilege too, and that, to be able to share, insight and wisdom. I think it's a very unique position to be in. But I also, there is a word of caution, like for some, like, there's so many avenues where people can, get information. And I'm an information seeker too. I love to speak to those who are wiser than me, have more experience in this area than me, because I love learning and I love hearing their experience, and I want to, I want to be able to, like, maybe it's an area where I want to improve on. So I'm a knowledge seeker too. So I know what it's like to be on that side. And I really hope that if I seek out knowledge or information from someone, that it's coming from a genuine source, that I
Mm.
won't be led, or that I'm not getting some half truth because maybe they weren't really sure themselves. So yeah, like I think in the world that we live in today, it's the information era. So if you're seeking information, be careful. Like, vet the person, or vet the industry, or vet their social media. I mean, social media isn't really like a full resume. Like, people are doing their best. That's why we have professionals like you, Hannah, to help people like me, right? Um, but it's not the only thing. And I think here's the other thing too that I've learned in life: you're not going to get everything from one person, and that's why you have to build a network. So you're gonna, even in for if you're seeking information, build a network of teachers, build a network
Mm.
of healers, build a network of mentors, because you're going to be able to take something from someone, right? And you're going to be able to make your own thing with it. And I think whatever you might resonate with someone that's on mindset, you might resonate with someone else that speaks about physical well-being. You might resonate with someone else that knows their stuff really well when it comes to like certain aspects of a business. And you take all those pieces and you put them together, right? And you make something for yourself that you can apply. And I think that's what that look that we should have when we're, for an information and knowledge seeker, to like take bits and pieces and put it together, whatever resonates with us the most.
On a side note, Lorenzo just made a fabulous point about not relying on advice from one person. I believe this applies to professional development as well as personal development. On a personal note for me, there was a time when I had no friends. Not the feeling isolated in a crowded room type of no friends, but truly being isolated with absolutely no one for about 5 months. Then I started dating my boyfriend, and he was my one and only friend. And bless his heart for being with me through this journey, but I knew I needed more people to rely on than just him alone. Now I have three people who I admire to turn to in times of need. It's just truly magical to have people who understand me and who can provide a fresh and different perspective, and I trust where they're coming from. And for me, to rely on just one of them solely puts a lot of pressure on them to be right all the time. However, having more people within my circle, I'm able to survey for advice and listen to whichever one resonates with me most in that moment, and to combine people's advice to just decide for myself. Thanks so much for listening. Let's get back to it. There's this famous quote, and I might butcher it because I have no idea where the source is, but it's something about something along the lines of like, if you are the type of person who is seeking information and then also sharing that information with others, then somebody who is truly knowledgeable or truly qualified to be a teacher or truly in their wisdom, they can take all of these quotes that they have heard, and if they can share them with accuracy without remembering where they received that quote, then that is their wisdom. That's usually their perspective or their take around these specific quotes. Um, because it doesn't take a wise person to just read a quote and say,
Mm-hmm.
so and so said this. If you can actually apply that to a larger picture, that's that's when you have that wisdom to be able to be in a leadership position. So a few things that really another thing that came to mind while you were speaking was you highlighted that being in these positions of giving people advice is both a privilege and a huge responsibility. I
Mhm.
think that you are absolutely on the money. Anytime I am honored to give somebody advice, or if somebody asks me a question, then I don't take that lightly at all, that it's like, "Oh my gosh, this is huge, you're reaching out for help," and let alone that, you reach out to me for help, and I think that's, like, such a gratifying feeling, and I think anybody who is this type of person to give advice, that's why they do that, is because that feeling is just so fantastic. However, the responsibility can't be underlined enough,
Right.
because if somebody is coming to you, as you said, there is this level of trust, and actually, like, not taking that trust for granted and giving them solid advice, sound advice, and also letting them know, like, "I'm not in your shoes, and even if I have been in your exact shoes before, I don't know how you're processing all of this, and all I can do is give my perspective." And
Uh,
there are people out there who will take that perspective and run with it. So you have to make sure that you're really discerning your own words and being very careful and giving
mhm.
these disclaimers. Um,
Yes.
it's just it is such a magical place to be, to
Mhm.
give people this advice. Um, and it also it shouldn't be taken lightly at all.
No, not at all. You're dealing with some, it could be their livelihood, right? So
Mm,
it's not taken lightly at all. And just as we're talking about this, like, wisdom is knowledge in action. So, when you know something, wow, that you experienced it, you put into action. That's wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge in action, and that's what we should be looking for too when
mm.
we're seeking, like, information from someone or advice. Do we see that wisdom that they have in action, right? That knowledge, it's in action. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Something else too, a little piece of advice for advice givers. I have found, just for myself, when I was younger, I love to just give unsolicited advice to people, whether or not they wanted to hear it. And part of that was I have always been very knowledgeable, very smart, and I wanted to show that off. And I have found that, like, I think you highlighted this before, people don't always want this advice. They're maybe not ready to hear it, or they're just truly not looking for it right now.
Right.
And, um, something that has really helped me, just to make sure that I'm honoring people's right to not take my advice, I ask them, "Are you sharing this with me because you want somebody to listen, or would you like me to give you advice? Are you looking for feedback? Can I offer you something?" All of these words
Great.
are, yeah, 'cause, otherwise people can say, "You know what? I am just venting right now. Thank you so much for listening." And that's
Mhm.
totally fine. I will not give you a single piece of advice. But then other times people are like, "You know what? Yeah, I told you this for a reason. I wanna hear what you have to say." And then you can hopefully truly, truly help somebody, and then the magic of that is it becomes their idea. It's like
Yeah.
they consented, "Yes, I want your advice." It's like, "Okay, I'm gonna give you my advice. I won't hold back, and if I'm wrong, you consented to this." It's been
Yes.
a good lesson learned.
For sure. For sure.
So, one of my last questions here to wrap us up, and I think we did brush on this, but I wanted to, just see if there's more that we can pull from it. How can we actually discern who we listen to in the mindset space? Who do we take advice from?
Another great question. Someone who's been there and done that. I think of, like, there's a lot. I listen to a lot of podcasts, especially because I'm on the road quite a bit, and I try to, like, fill my my cup and my mind with, both positive, but also, like, good things, but also, like, uh, from those who have business experience. Like, I'll give you just an example. For example, um, I listened to one podcast, Ed Milet, and Ed Milet, like, world renowned, right? But I love the fact that Ed is also very much, um, down to earth. One of my favorite episodes that I listen to is on a weekly basis is his Thursday episode when he just talks on his own and he gives like a 20-30 minute piece because he's just real. Okay. And Ed's been done. He's done it. He is fully disclosed and shared. times where he lost electricity. There was no running water. This is not just when he was a child. Like talking, he was married. He was an adult. That's the type of person I want to listen to, not because now he just has so much, quote unquote, money and success in that way, but an individual who's been able to dig themselves out of a hole like that and gone on to now, put all the success aside, what he does for other people and the message he shares for free. Yes, there's things you have to pay for, like if you want something in specific to work with, of course. But so much that he shares is free on his podcast, and I really think that's the type of person I want to listen to. So who should we listen to? Try to source individuals who have been there and done that. Maybe what you're trying to do. Even been there and done that when it comes to we talk about mindset, the mindset space. Are they accredited in some way to be able to speak on a certain subject? That's something to look into. And also, how far of a reach or how far of an impact have you had on others? And overall, is whatever they're sharing well received? Is that you can also do a little digging and make sure that it is something that's sourced properly? So yeah, I think there is a caution because with the advent of social media, so many people have come on and been like, I'm a coach. And not that maybe they're not, but I think that term coach and even mentor has been really, really, really overused. And that's why like Matt and I were very like, we don't sell a program. It's specifically tailored to the individual or individuals or their business. It's like, I don't want to be labeled as a coach or like, just like, hey, I'm a mentor, but it's just like, for sake of some terms, sometimes, yeah, we explain, okay, where it's mentorship we offer, and it is coaching ultimately at the end of the day, but our take on this thing from a personal perspective is not to buy anything and to be coached by us. It's like, it's very much specific to the individual, and I think that's something else you need to look at. What do you get out of it? What's the return for you? And if you're seeking out knowledge, or paying somebody for something, what do you get in return in terms of value? And that's the key word, value.
So many great points. I can really tell that you are somebody who chooses your words. When you say like, well, I didn't want to be called a coach, but what I'm doing is technically coaching. And like, I respect the crap out of that, because I think that I had the exact same moment where I was doing like consultations with people where they couldn't quite afford my full price packages. And so I was like, cool, we just hop on a strategy sesh. I can give you a game plan. And it was, quite a bit of coaching, but I hate the word coach. And I think that just as people, it's really important to figure out the words that align with you. Something else that you mentioned at Rachel's launch party was like, don't say but, because whenever you say but, you negate everything that came beforehand. And I do that too. Like I try my best to avoid words that negate what I'm saying. So that's like don't and won't and can't. And also like shoulda, woulda, coulda. I try my best not to use those words. And like it's quite a fun little game to really pick my words in a way that convey my message in the best way possible. And I find like that, for me, that is how I know who to listen to. I can tell by the way that some people speak that they have done the work, that they have had a lot of experience. And I'm sure there's so many people out there where they have done the work in their context, they have experience in their context, but it's just not in the direction that I'm going. So those are not the people that I'm listening to. But people, as you mentioned, if they have businesses, if they have things in their life, or they have done things in their life that are similar to me, and they also speak my language, these are the things that make somebody to look up to and to listen to. I find like that synchronicity is really what draws me in for people. And like that's especially why I wanted to speak with you today, because you have said many, many things that I have either said myself in the past or I try to learn and tell myself just in my present and moving forward. So I think that like whenever you get those little bells in your head of like, talk to that person, you should talk to that person because you can
I
learn
agree.
so much.
I agree. I agree. Reach out. I think that's something that we don't do enough of. We always talk about like networking with people. Networking doesn't always have to. It's not always possible to meet up in person, but we
Mhm.
can get the phone or email, whatever. And I think it's important that we do that. Especially like if something resonates with us, and that's like also like a little voice inside saying, hey, maybe you should speak to someone. Maybe I don't want to call it a sign, but sometimes it can be a sign to reach out to that person. There might be a connection there for something.
Mhm. Mhm. And like I've listened to that little voice and sometimes been super duper surprised whether it has no bearing on what I'm doing business wise and they just gave me a pep talk I really needed, or like maybe they had a referral for me or something like
Mm.
that. Just reaching out to people when you get those little alarm bells, I think is so important. Even if it's just in case. But a few things for myself that I wanted to share just to wrap up this topic today is like being somebody who does give advice and being somebody that people go to for advice. I think it's very, very important to recognize the responsibility of being somebody's teacher while simultaneously always remember to be a learner. And I think
Mm.
that's something in essence that you've shared, and I think that's something that both of us like to practice, being an information seeker, that's being a learner. And no one man can know everything. Nobody
That,
knows everything, but I'm
that's right.
sure as hell gonna try. And, I really appreciate this conversation. I'm wondering if there's anything that we've spoken about that maybe we brushed over or even something that we didn't get a chance to share that you wanted to share. Um, is there anything that you would
Hmm.
like to share? Open space.
Open space. Well, I think we did a great job in covering a lot of different topics today, like and real topics that people are that they're in need of. When it comes to like seeking out guidance or having the proper mindset for things. I think these are real topics. And again, I'll say this again, like, for so many people, they have so many questions. Um, you know, if they're going to start a business, like so many questions and not knowing where to go. Like, I think having this type of content, I think having the dialogue and people like us out there available, having like the launch party that was had, I think those are things that people should keep a closer eye out and ear out for, and put themselves out there to be part of that. Um, I know what I'll tell you. I've been to so many like networking events, and I truly love it. I enjoy every time I leave. I feel like some sort of like invigorated somehow, by what someone said or just the energy that was in the room. And I know that so many people at these events I've been to, how many people I'll tell you, it's my first time being something like this.
Mhm.
And I really think to myself, I'm like, cool, I'm so happy that they made it. But I really hope, I hope, because I know from my experience, that they keep doing it because
Mhm.
the benefit that they can get from it. It's not that you want to just get something, but like how you'll feel after plays a big part, and what you've maybe learned or felt. Our memory, remember, our mind will remember certain things, and especially emotions. And if we've
Mhm.
had an experience that we remember that emotion, that can carry us through. You know, so yeah, I think that's one thing I'd want to share. And something we talked about today.
Yeah, I love that so much. I think that like just in my own experience of being a human, that's a funny thing to say, but it's true. My own experience of being a person, like throughout my life, I have this pattern where I like to retreat and recluse myself into my shell. And I also like to get out of that shell and I like to be more extroverted and connect and communicate and meet people. And with this sort of duality that I experience, I find it can almost it can almost have a backlash where I'll be met with like rapid fire lessons. And that's essentially like the phase that I'm in at the moment. Like for the last 3 weeks, there was Rachel's launch party and then some personal things in my family life, and then a podcast interview that I did with somebody on their show. It was the first time I was a guest, and it's just making me kind of realize this recluse version of myself. It's really great for reflecting on all of these lessons that I've learned. It's really great for integrating and grounding, and it is quite wonderful, but it doesn't have to be as long as I've been having it. And so something I'm
Well,
working right now, working on learning, is how I can shorten those
mm,
gaps where maybe I can take a day to be a little hermit and go into my shell and hide away, and then get back out of my shell and connect and learn and grow. Because you're right, these things they can really be quite invigorating, quite motivating, and inspiring as well. And I really love those inspiration feelings, and I want to learn as much as I can on this planet. But without that integration time, I think sometimes that learning can come in vain. So
yeah,
it,
that's a
it
great
yeah,
that's a great point. Like, because we have to, like, like digest information. We have to like be able to take it in, and sometimes we do need that downtime. Just to let things kind of settle. And I think it's super healthy to do that, right? And that's
I
a good
appreciate
point.
that.
Growth point on your part too, though, like recognizing, maybe making an adjustment, not to like maybe not being so recluse for so long, but that's for all of us, like to learn. That's how we learn. That's the journey that we're on, right? I really believe
Absolutely.
that. Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. That's made me think.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I appreciate that. I consider myself like an introvert in my heart, but I do have this extroverted side to me, and I love that extroverted side to me, but she needs a bit of support, a little bit of recovery time, because I can't have it on all the time. But I I'm just reflecting on the past few weeks, including meeting you and your business partner, Matt, that there really truly is so much that I have learned in the last couple of weeks that I'm just really grateful, and I appreciate the vibe that you put out into the world, and that
Thank,
um the words that you share. I really, really do.
thank you so much, and I appreciate that. But I have to just put it back to you as well, because we there was so many synergies. Like I said, we only met each other, like, yes, in the group chat, then in person once. There's a great synergy, and I think the vibe you put out is equally important and enjoyable, and people pick up on that. I saw that at the event. So thank you very much for the time today.
Yeah, it's absolutely my pleasure, and thank you for your kind words. I didn't expect to feel feelings this morning, but I think that this was a wonderful conversation, well, a wonderful episode, and I think we could talk all day, but if we don't put a pin, we should probably put a pin, so we will call this conversation here. Would you mind just repeating where people can find you?
So on Instagram at Pro Risk Takers, you can reach out to me at prorisktakers@gmail.com. Yeah, Instagram is the best way to reach out to us, to send us a message, and we'll get back to you. Like, Matt and I both monitor the Instagram ourselves, so we'll totally reach out and get back to people.
Amazing. I will pop that in the description for anyone listening, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here with me, and if you enjoyed today's topic, now is a great moment to subscribe. If you have any feedback about today's topic, please reach out to my social channels. I help creative entrepreneurs market their creations in a way that feels authentic. I have a self-study marketing program that covers basic and advanced marketing concepts with 9 modules and activity sheets. I also sell content creation templates to help you manage your social media with unlimited content creation ideas. And I also offer one-on-one marketing consulting services. Check out my socials and my website to learn more. If you're interested in working with me, please reach out via email. So that's social media if you're reaching out for my podcast, and email if you're reaching out for business. All relevant contact links are in the description, and thanks again for listening. Cheers for now. That was pretty good.